In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Good and gracious God, we come here and we ask you to send your Spirit to be with us and to give us your guidance and directions in the matters of our parish and diocese. Help us to realize we're part of a bigger community and see the big picture. Help us to be not afraid to ask any questions we need, but to be charitable and loving in doing that. We give thanks for the bishop and diocesan staff to be with us along with everyone here. We make this prayer in your name. Amen. Father, Son, Spirit, amen. All right, without further ado, I want to introduce Bishop Siegel. His first pastorate was of a parish in St. Isidore. He comes from the Diocese of Joliet. Bishop, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Father, for hosting us this evening. Yeah, I've always had a great devotion to St. Isidore. I grew up on a farm, and especially in some of those lean years, we had a great devotion to St. Isidore, praying for his intercession to help get the crops in or stop the rains and get the crops planted. And so, but also, again, my first parish was St. Isidore. Originally, Cloverdale was the name of the town, and it was a little farm community. By the time I got there in 1988, it was a parish of 4,000 families, surrounded by strip malls and irregular malls, and it was one of the busiest intersections in the county. So we had to figure out a new purpose for St. Isidore besides being farmers. We had a nice garden, at least, we were able to attribute to pray for the intercession of St. Isidore. But it is good to be with you this evening. When I was announced as your bishop, of course, went on the website and I saw you were undergoing this capital campaign. And had to be so impressed and by the foresight to undergo a process like this for the future, the diocese, for the future of your parishes, to enjoy the blessings that those who have gone before us have provided for us by their sacrifices. Now it's that idea of how we can go forward and provide that for the next generations, both providing for our diocesan needs as well as your own parish needs. And so again, I appreciate the courage and wisdom, because it's not easy. A campaign is never an easy thing. But to see that as really an essential part of going forward, our own stewardship of giving back to the Lord, part of what He's given to us, for the service of the church, the service of your parish. And so again, thank you for coming out this evening to hear about this campaign and how it can benefit both your parish and, of course, benefit our diocesan church. And again, it's a blessing to be your bishop. And it's been nice again. It's my first impression, of course, coming here to ask for money, but it's still good to be with you. I look forward to coming to be able to celebrate Mass here, or confirmation, or whatever other ceremonies to be with you on a more informal basis. Again, just thank you for your hospitality. And I'd like to invite Father Bernie Aitchen, our newly reinstated Vicar General, to speak about the capital campaign.
Good evening. Wanted to try to back into this a little bit just to get us to think a little bit about capital campaigns and why we do these things. I'll be honest with you, I'm probably like most pastors. I got to my first pastorate in Princeton about 22 years ago, and we were struggling a little bit when I got there, and we got to get on a good foundation, going along pretty good, and then after about 3 years, somebody brings it up at a parish council meeting. Well, Father, we need this, or we need that, or we need to do this, and we need to do a capital campaign. And that's the stuff that strikes fear in your heart as a pastor, and you don't sleep for about a month because you don't want to do it. My response was, look, folks, if this is something you feel strongly about, I'll do everything I can to help you accomplish this, but just know that we're not going to go into debt to do this project. We got to raise the money up front, and so we set out and we did our work, and we did this campaign. And the reason that we had to do this when I was at Princeton was because we had needs in the parish that went beyond what our normal operating budget would cover. The utilities and the salaries and the normal upkeep. We handled that stuff with our Sunday collection, but we had a vision for something greater that we just couldn't do with that Sunday collection. That's why we did a capital campaign. And honestly, I didn't see how they could have done what they did at Princeton. We were a blue-collar, rural parish. We didn't have folks that had a lot of resources, but they got behind it. Everybody doing a little bit, doing what they could. And I truly believe the day we dedicated that building and the renovated church, I think they were astounded by what they were able to accomplish together. And it was a beautiful reminder to me what we can do in faith if we work for a common goal. Well, I go to Holy Rosary. I got banished to Evansville. I was fine in a little town. I'm from Tell City originally, so I'm used to small towns, and I like that. I really like being in small towns. Real small towns are great. But I get to Evansville, same thing. We were struggling to pay the bills, but gradually we got on a footing and things started rolling, and after about 3 or 4 years it started. We need to do this, we need to do that. And I said, look, guys, if this is something that you all think this parish needs to do, I'm going to support you. I want to help you make those dreams happen, but we have to work together. Again, it was projects that we couldn't begin to approach with our Sunday giving. It was going to require a special effort and a capital campaign. And again, we weighed into it, and the kind of numbers just scared me to death. And I didn't see any way possible. But the people pulled together. We had some deep pockets. We had some tremendous stories of generosity of people that could do just a little bit. And in the end, we reached our goals and finished a project we're really happy with. That campaign just ended 2 weeks ago. And we ran our diocesan campaign 3 months ago. So, and we just merged parishes. And we had actually 3 parishes, because we had Nativity, but they also had the Latino ministry, and that's like having a 3rd parish. So we had all that stuff going on, and when they said a diocesan capital campaign, I got to be honest with you, I wasn't too thrilled about this. I probably wasn't one that got priests that was jumping up and down the bandwagon saying, yeah, Bishop Thompson, we got to do this. In fact, in our conversations, I kind of leaned the other way. But and then I got my pledge card for that campaign. And where did this number come from? And Tim McGuire can tell you, he and I had a couple conversations about that. I was too mad to talk to Diane. But, you know, I want to do my part. I made the pledge. And my heart wasn't right. I'll admit that. But then I had a bit of a conversion. It occurred to me, and I should know this, I understood this, that these kind of campaigns are for things beyond what we can do with our Sunday giving. In our diocese, the Sunday giving is our CPC to support the diocese. But there are things beyond that we'd love to be able to do, and that's what this capital campaign is about for the diocesan side. And the awakening I had in this whole thing is I got to looking at it and I said, you know, I showed up at this parish and there was a church that was built and paid for. There was a school that was built and paid for. I was living in a rectory I'm embarrassed to be in, nicer than we need to be in, built and paid for. What am I going to leave for the next generation? You know, what am I going to leave behind for the guy that follows me? And then all of a sudden that pledge, I felt a lot better about it, a lot better. It opened up a new possibility. I'll tell you that for our parish at Holy Rosary, it was a blessing for a newly merged parish to be able to come together for a common goal and work on something together. And I think we were surprised at what we were able, I'm actually astonished at what we were able to do together. And this proceeds that will be kept at the parish level are going to be something we were able to do together. And that helps bring us together. And so that was a blessing for us. My encouragement for you tonight is this is going to be a great place to get your questions out and to hear the straight story. I'm really glad so many of you are here because, our worst enemy will be the rumors from the people that aren't here tonight that don't understand what we're really doing, and you will be the ones that say, well, that's not exactly what we're doing here. So I'm really grateful that so many of you are here, and I just encourage you to keep an open heart to what we have to share with you and this process, and there are going to be a lot of blessings for our diocese, not least of which, because so many of us priests kind of shy away from these kind of campaigns, there are a lot of parishes that have needs that maybe aren't getting addressed. All of us guys get a little push. We're getting a push to do this thing, but in the end, it's a blessing for the parishes because where the diocese is supporting this process. So with that, I'm going to turn this to Tim McGuire, our diocesan chancellor and chief operating officer, and allow him the opportunity to share with you kind of how we got to this point and some of the nuts and bolts. So Tim McGuire.
Well, thank you, Father Bernie. First of all, the first thing I have to do is apologize to you as a group. And the reason I have to do that, it's my responsibility to calculate what time we need to leave to get here on time so that Bishop Siegel and Father Bernie can greet and talk to you before we get started. Obviously, we didn't do that tonight, and that's my fault, my responsibility. So my apologies for not getting us here a little earlier. So I wish I could blame it on the time zone, but I can't do that. So my apologies, first of all. As Father Bernie said, my name is Tim McGuire, and I'm fortunate enough to serve as the Chancellor and Chief Operating Officer for the Diocese of Evansville. And to give you just a brief background on this capital campaign, I think it helps give some perspective to it. In fact, when Bishop Gettelfinger was still bishop, he considers doing a capital campaign because we, as far as we know, are the only diocese, or the last diocese, if not the last, one of the very last dioceses in the country to not have done a capital campaign at the diocesan level. So Bishop Gettelfinger thought about this a few years ago and just decided it wasn't the right time at that time to do one. So when Bishop Thompson arrived, as he said, as Bishop Siegel said when he arrived, I'm just going to take some time, learn the diocese, see what I can determine, and then we'll make a decision on what to do on a lot of different fronts. So after he'd been here a while, as Father Bernie mentioned, he talked about a capital campaign. Does it make sense? As he did with all of his decisions, he consulted all his different advisory groups and said, do you think it's time? Should we do a capital campaign? So after talking to everyone, he decided to do a feasibility study. If you're familiar with capital campaigns, many times you'll do a feasibility study to say, how much money do we think we can raise? Is it the right time? What should we do? What should we ask for? So we did that, and after some due diligence, we hired the Steyer Group, and Diane Keller is here tonight representing the Steyer Group. And the Steyer Group conducted a feasibility study in the fall of 2015. And they came back and said almost a year ago to the date to present the results of that feasibility study in early 2016. And one of the things that we did, and you may have been part of this back in the fall, is that we talked about the 4 areas as a diocese that we were going to try to raise money for. And when we asked people about those, all 4 of those were supported very much by the people. The people who were asked said, yes, these things, and I'll talk more about those in a moment, are things that we can support. So that was good news, and I think it's proven given the success of this campaign. As you may know, you may have seen in the message not too long ago, our original goal was $22 million. That's what we hope to raise. As of today, we're at $27.2 million. So it's been a hugely successful campaign. The model's done really well. You'll hear more about that a little bit later. But one of the things that we said was, the things that we put out there were things that seemed to resonate with people. So Bishop Thompson then said, well, what should we do? The feasibility study came back from the Steyer Group, and they said, we think you can raise somewhere between $24 and $30 million as a diocese. In fact, we think it's probably in the neighborhood of $29 million, and the reason they said $29 million is because if you add up the Sunday collections for all the parishes in the diocese on an annual basis, it's $29 million. So they thought that we could probably raise in that neighborhood. Well, Bishop Thompson said, you know what, should we go forward with this? What should we do? So again, he went back to all his groups and asked that, should we move forward? And of course, he made the decision after listening to everyone to move forward. But one of the things that he heard, especially from his priests, as Father Bernie talked about, was, you know what, we've just gone through some parish reorganizations, as you know, at this parish. You know, can we have a little time perhaps to deal with some of the issues related to that before we jump into a capital campaign? So he said, yes, let's do that. So instead of every parish doing it all at the same time, the capital campaign is taking place in 4 waves. There was a wave in the fall of 2016, then a wave in the spring and fall of last in 17, and then this is the final wave, the 4th wave, here in the spring of 2018. And the parishes were grouped. The first wave were parishes that wanted to do something. They'd come to Bishop Thompson before this capital campaign and said, we as a parish we need a new parking lot, whatever it might be, we need to get started. So there were 8 parishes that started in wave 1. Then wave 2 was the parishes that were not involved in any type of parish reorganization. And then wave 3 and 4 are the parishes that are involved in the parish reorganization. And if you recall, the parish reorganization was done through 2 announcements. So the first group went in wave 3, and then the second round went in wave 4. For the most part, we had to move a few parishes around just to make the numbers work out for each wave. But generally speaking, that was the thinking behind putting these 4 waves. So we're headed in the home stretch now. And as I mentioned, at the time, Bishop Thompson, when he set the goal, said, this is the first one that we've done in the diocese. We want to make sure it's success, do what we can to make it feel good as they can to people. So we set the goal at 22 million, or he set the goal at 22 million. And it's a split campaign. If you're familiar with that, then something that Bishop Thompson was very familiar with was a shared campaign. So for every dollar raised, 50 cents is used for parish needs and 50 cents is used for diocesan needs. So the 22 million, we identified $11 million that we needed on the diocesan side, and then each parish was going to come up with their needs based on whatever requirements were at the local level to come up with the 11 million on the parish side. So the way it works is each parish was given a goal based on the Sunday collections for 14 and 15, and the goal was based on your Sunday collections. And then each parish, but the difference between that and CPC, if you're familiar with CPC, each parish gets a goal or an assessment. But in the CPC case is in fact a goal, or it is an assessment. You're asked to raise that amount of money, and if you don't, then the parish still has to come up with the difference between what's raised and the assessment. In this case, one of the big things pleased to walk away with from tonight is this is not an assessment, it's a goal. We just ask that a parish give it a good faith effort, follow the program that Diane's going to talk about in a moment, and if you do that, whatever's raised is raised. If you raise $50,000, $25,000 stays at the parish. The diocese uses its $25,000. We thank the Lord for a great campaign, and we move on. The goal here is, I think, was around $400,000, but I think it's been increased to accommodate for some other things, and you'll talk more about that later at the local level. But it's I think the goal is $950 here at the local level to accommodate some of the needs. But it's a 50-50 split up to the $400,000. But then, as Bishop Thompson said, strong parishes make for a strong diocese. So the decision was made that anything from 100% of your goal to 125% of your goal, 80% of that money stays at the parish, 20% used for diocesan needs, and anything above 125% of your goal, all that money stays at the parish. So again, wanting to focus on what's needed at the parish. This is just as much about the parishes as it is about the diocese. So as we move forward, that's how the campaign is structured. It's a 3-year pledge commitment, what we're asking for. Now, if somebody has something where they need to do stretched out to 4 or 5, obviously we'd be glad to work with people on that, but it is a 3-year pledge commitment. The other thing that, I mentioned CPC. We are going to continue CPC. People say, well, why do you do that? Well, if you conducted a campaign at the parish before, as Father Bernie said, you continue to take up the Sunday collection while you conduct the capital campaign. The Sunday collection pays for the lights, it pays for insurance, pays for the staff salary, whatever it might be. And then use the capital campaign for extraordinary needs at the parish. Well, at the diocesan level, the CPCs are equivalent of the Sunday collection. So we need to continue that while we raise money for some of these other things. We did make a change, or Bishop Thompson made a change to CPC in the timing in such that it used to be conducted in the spring. We moved that to the fall. We're transitioning that so that parishes didn't have to conduct CPC and the capital campaign at the same time. So I think in this case, capital of the CPC was conducted in the fall of last year, and then you do the capital campaign in the spring, so again, that they're not on top of each other, and then everybody will move to CPC in the fall. So that's some of the rationale behind some of those changes. We handed out a sheet. I hope everyone has one. If you don't have one, we can certainly get you one after the meeting, or if you want one now, we have some extras, I think, up front or in the back. But just to briefly talk about some of the needs from the diocesan side, as we mentioned, each parish will identify what they need to do with their money locally, but on the diocesan side, as I mentioned, we identified $11 million. And that's broken down into 4 categories, or 5 categories, really. The first category is $3 million for priests and seminarian expenses, or vocations expense. So we've identified $3 million for that, $2 million to support vocations expense, or the cost of the priest in the seminary, and that $2 million would be endowed. And then we have $1 million for priest support that supports a variety of the programs that are listed there for priests: sabbatical fund, clergy aid fund, or to name just a few. So that money would be endowed, and our goal is, and our focus is going to be to endow over 60% of the funds that we raise at the diocesan level. So that entire $3 million would be placed in the Catholic Foundation. The next category was Catholic education, and this is not just schools. Sometimes people, when they hear Catholic education, think schools. Well, it's more than schools. It's also faith formation from the beginning to the end. It's not just while we're in school. We have a charge as Catholics to continue to learn about our faith. So a big part of it, though, does go for schools, and the group that we're targeting in this group, we have $1.5 million identified for tuition assistance, and that is for the group of people that make more money than is necessary for the voucher. They don't qualify for a voucher because they're just above that, but maybe don't make enough money to be able to pay tuition in completely on their own. So there's a middle group there that we've looked to start to identify. So we have identified $1.5 million for tuition assistance, and then there's $500,000 for teacher development, and also to help educate parents on where the funds that they can obtain to help obtain a Catholic education. And then we have $500,000 for religious education, and $500,000 for youth and young adults, because those are both important parts of our Catholic education. So again, that totals $3 million. The next group that we have is $3 million for social justice. As you know, Pope Francis is something very important, very near and dear to him, and it was something very near and dear to Bishop Thompson's heart as well. So we have identified $3 million for social outreach, and $2.2 million will be used for a social enterprise, and $800,000 will be endowed for other programs. But I want to talk just for a moment about the social enterprise, the $2.2 million. A social enterprise is a business that a nonprofit starts. Many nonprofits across the country do this today. You start a business, and you hope the business is profitable, like any business, and then the profits go back into the business. But where it becomes social outreach is that the people that work for this business are people that can't be employed for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're just released from prison. Maybe they have other unfortunate situations in their life that put them in a bad spot. And the hope is that they work for this enterprise for 6 months, 12 months at the longest, and then they're able to go be employed at Toyota or maybe other places for long-term employment. And one of the things that Sharon Burns has heard from people as she's talked to business leaders around the diocese about this is they think it's a great idea, they're looking forward to it because they're having trouble getting people, and they said, Sharon, we don't care what you teach them how to do, whether it's fix this, make a candle, whatever it might be. We need you to train them on certain things, how to show up on time, how to take constructive criticism, some of the soft skills that maybe are taken for granted that we need to help people that maybe aren't as fortunate that have had the opportunity to do that. So social outreach is a big part of this. The fourth category is actually the bricks and mortar part of it. If you've been to the Catholic Center in Evansville, the cornerstone of that building is 1963. The windows in that building are 1963 windows, or the original windows. So just as much hot and cold air goes out of those windows as comes, unfortunately, a lot comes in as well. So our hope is we're going to replace those windows with more energy efficient windows that will pay for themselves over time. And then the other $500,000 would be spent for St. Benedict Cathedral. St. Ben's is part of this campaign they raise money above and beyond their goals significantly. They've actually raised over $3.5 million for renovation of the interior of the cathedral. So if you're down at the cathedral over the next several years, you'll notice obviously you'll see the renovation that's taking place. But Bishop Gettelfinger named St. Ben's the cathedral in 1999. Up until about 2010, 2012, all the diocesan events that were taking place at the cathedral, because the cathedral is the bishop's church, it's where Chrism Mass is, ordination, things of that nature, they were not being reimbursed for any expenses. We've only recently started doing that, and out of the sense of justice, we feel like that we need to contribute towards the renovation of that cathedral because of what it's been used for and what it will be used for in the future. So while they participated in the campaign like every other parish, we are giving part of the diocesan needs back to them for that renovation project. And then finally, we have $1 million for campaign expenses. That includes postage, all the materials that are associated with it, the mailings, all the materials you have tonight and that you will get in the mail later. And it also includes the expenses for the Steyer group, and which are the majority of the expenses. And none of the expense will be bared by the parish. It's all coming out of the diocesan side. And some people have said, well, gosh, $1 million, that's a lot of money to pay to a group to help us raise money. But as I mentioned, it's been hugely successful. We're at $27 million on a goal of $22 million. Having been involved in this from day one, I can tell you, without the Steyer group, we would not be where we are today. They've done a wonderful job. They've kept us focused. They've given us a process, and a process that works. And I will go to my grave saying that there's no way we would be where we are today without the assistance and their help. And it's not a sliding scale. They don't get paid on how much we raise. It was a flat fee regardless. So I feel very strongly about the support, and I think the pastors that have gone through this would support that as well. That's not to say that Diane doesn't keep them on track a little bit, but she's done a great job with that. So with that, the last thing before I turn it over to Diane, people have said, well, what have you learned from the first 2 or 3 ways? What have you learned? The one thing, and again, Diane will talk more about this, is that when we do the campaign, when a mailing goes out, which will go out to every household in the parish, you'll get a package that will contain the page you have tonight, but it's inside a booklet. And along with that booklet, there'll be a letter from Bishop Siegel asking you for money. But it's not as simple as taking the parish goal, dividing it by the number of parish families, and say we need X amount of dollars, the same amount of dollars from every family. That wouldn't be fair. Some families couldn't do that, and other families could do more. So the Steyer group comes up with a formula that each letter will have a specific ask amount tailored to your family. So you will get a letter that says, please prayerfully consider X dollar amount. And people see that and they're a little shocked, little sticker shock, as Father Bernie mentioned, when they see that. But the thing is, people have said, well, I have to give this because Father asked, or because Bishop Siegel asked, or Bishop Thompson asked. No, that's not it. We just ask that you prayerfully consider that amount. We're not sitting at the Catholic Center looking at, oh, what did so-and-so give, or what did this person give, or that person. The only thing that we ask is that you pray about it. It's between you and God what you give. Bishop Siegel's not looking at every card that comes in. Father Bernie's not. I'm not. No one's doing that. We ask that you just consider that amount prayerfully, you and your family, and that's the only person that will know, except for a few people that just absolutely have to know to make sure that it's accounted for correctly. But beyond that, no one else will know what you're asked for or what you give. So again, we just ask that you prayerfully consider that. And Diane will talk a little bit more about where that number comes from. So with that, thank you for being here tonight. We know there's ball games, there's other things you could be at. So thank you. It's a great turnout here tonight, a wonderful turnout. And again, I apologize for us not getting here sooner. That's my fault. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Diane.
Okay, everybody take a great big breath. Take off your coat, get comfy. We're here for the night. And I hope that's not the last laugh that we have this evening. My name is Diane Keller, and I am with the Steyer Group. It is very humbling to see all of you here. I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am. Y'all signed up when you came in, you signed in, right? Was there anyone who didn't have an opportunity to sign in? Okay, get this woman's name and this woman's name, because y'all are just signed up to be the new volunteers on this effort. And I want to thank you for that. We have it in ink. Some people are not laughing at all. I am noting that. Let me share a little bit about where I come from and talk a little bit about a successful campaign. The Steyer Group is located in Omaha, Nebraska, and I live in Denver, Colorado. And I have been with the Steyer Group for 12 years. Prior to that, I spent 16 years in parish life. Depending on where the children were and they were growing, depended on what hat I wore in the parish office. So I sit in the pews a bit further west of here. That was a joke. Okay. I just wanted to catch you and make sure you're listening. And so I have a great love of our church and want to share with you that the Steyer Group, which has for the past 20 years conducted more than 1,000 capital campaigns, whether they be for archdiocesan efforts, diocesan efforts, individual parishes, or other nonprofits in general. Certain patterns or certain things surface when you do that many, and we bring all of that with us to each and every project as we move forward. And I have a firm belief for fundraising in the Catholic Church that until all of our facilities and all of our programming is endowed, there's always room for a capital campaign. I'll go toe-to-toe to those with those that aren't in that direction. And the reason that I say that is, as you heard mentioned before, what we have was built before we arrived, and we want to make sure that it's here for those yet to come. We all know that God calls us in the Old Testament to 10%, and I can tell you that nationally Catholics give 1 to 1.5% of their earned income back in charitable giving. So this is not how to go from 0 to 10%, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. No. What we are trying to accomplish is an opportunity for us as Catholics to actually stop and take a look in the privacy of our homes at, and a perfect time because we're into tax time now, tax season, what are we currently doing on behalf of our parish? What are we earning for 2017? What percentage does that work out to? What might we consider in regards to this effort? What might we be able to do on behalf of our parish moving forward? Now, in this effort, we talk about parish offertory, we talk about CPC, and then we talk about the extraordinary gifts of a capital campaign. We don't want offertory to be fractured. We don't want CPC to be fractured. And so we're looking at this as over and above, separate from whatever you choose to give to offertory and to CPC. But why would we conduct a capital campaign? At the parish level, you have very real needs. A number of parishes, all the parishes have had very real needs. There hasn't been a pastor that said, Diane, we don't need to raise any money and we don't have any needs. And so I will say that as we